Pick up that passport or you will regret it now.
Agent throws away black girl's passport. Seconds later, what she did leaves airline in shock. You know what happens when a gate agent throws a black woman's passport in the trash and thinks she's gotten away with it? She finds out that woman has the CEO of the airline on speed dial. But that's not even the craziest part of this story. What happened in the 60 seconds after Maya Richardson's passport hit that garbage bin didn't just get a gate agent fired. It sparked a viral movement that reached 40 million people, triggered congressional hearings, and forced every major airline in America to completely overhaul their discrimination policies. And it all started because one woman decided she was done being quiet. They thought they knew who they were dealing with. A young black woman flying economy. No power, no connections, no recourse. Just another passenger they could dismiss, disrespect, and discard. They had no idea they were about to make the most expensive mistake in that airline's history. Because Maya Richardson? She wasn't just any passenger. And what she did next left everyone in that airport absolutely speechless. But before we get to the moment that changed everything, before we see a gate agent being escorted out by security while Maya stood there calm as still water, before we watch an entire airline scramble to contain the damage, we need to understand something important. This wasn't Maya's first time experiencing this kind of treatment. It was just the first time she decided to do something about it that the whole world would see. 6 hours before that passport ended up in the trash, Maya woke up at 4:30 in the morning in her Southside Chicago apartment. Couldn't sleep. Too much excitement. Too much anxiety. Too much weight pressing on this one day. Maya Richardson was 32 years old and had already accomplished more than most people do in a lifetime. Senior software architect at a Fortune 500 tech company. Leading a team of 50 engineers. MIT graduate, 6-figure salary. The kind of success that's supposed to mean you've made it, that you've earned respect, that you don't have to prove yourself anymore. But Maya had learned the hard way that your resume doesn't always matter when someone's already decided who you are based on what they see. She stood in her bedroom that morning, holding a framed photograph. Her grandmother, Dorothy Richardson, in her Sunday best, standing outside a church in Detroit in 1965. Dorothy had spent her entire life cleaning houses for families who had more money than they knew what to do with, while she struggled to feed her own children. She'd never traveled outside Michigan, never saw the ocean, never got anywhere near the continent her ancestors had been stolen from. And today, her granddaughter was flying to Cape Town, South Africa. This wasn't just a business trip for Maya. Yes, she was delivering the keynote speech at the Global Tech Summit. Yes, her face was on all the conference materials. Yes, this was the biggest professional moment of her career. But this was so much bigger than that. This was about honoring a woman who never got the chance. This was about stepping onto African soil for the first time and feeling that connection to something that had been violently severed generations ago. Maya's phone buzzed with a voice message from her mother, left late the night before. She pressed play while carefully packing her designer carry-on. "Baby, I know you're probably already awake, overthinking like always." Her mother's voice cracked with emotion. Grandma Dorothy would be so proud, so incredibly proud. Her grandbaby speaking in Africa. It's everything she wanted but never got to have. Bring us back. Stories, Maya. Beautiful stories. And please, baby, stay safe. You know how people can be. There it was. Stay safe. The warning every black parent gives their child. The reminder that excellence doesn't always protect you. That preparation doesn't guarantee fair treatment. That sometimes the world will see your skin before it ever sees your credentials. Maya felt that familiar knot in her stomach but pushed it away. Not today. Today was going to be perfect. She'd planned everything down to the last detail. Checked in exactly 24 hours early. Downloaded her boarding pass. Verified her passport 3 times. Valid until 2027. Filled with stamps from Tokyo, London, Dubai, Paris from all her business travel. She'd even chosen an economy ticket instead of letting her company pay for business class, wanting to stay humble, stay grounded. Everything was ready. Everything was in order. Nothing could go wrong, except everything was about to go spectacularly, devastatingly wrong. And then Maya was going to make it right in a way that nobody saw coming. By 7 a.m., Maya was in an Uber heading to O'Hare International Airport. She looked the part she'd worked so hard to earn. Tailored blazer, silk blouse, natural hair twisted into an elegant updo, designer carry-on, noise-canceling headphones. The image of a successful professional woman about to take an international flight. But even dressed like success, even carrying the markers of achievement, Maya knew better than to assume anything. Her entire life had taught her that sometimes none of it matters. The international terminal was buzzing with the usual chaos when she arrived 3 hours before her 11:15 flight. Families hugging goodbye, business travelers speed walking with coffee in hand, the constant echo of announcements bouncing off the high ceilings. Maya moved through it all with quiet confidence, the kind that comes from doing this dozens of times. Security went smoothly, no extra screening, no random pat-downs. She collected her things and headed straight for Gate B47. Global Airways Flight 2847 to Cape Town. She'd memorized those numbers weeks ago, repeated them like a prayer. When she arrived at the gate, it was already filling with passengers. Maya's eyes immediately went to the two gate agents behind the desk. The senior agent was impossible to miss. White woman, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, expression hard and cold even from across the room. Her name tag read Karen Mitchell, senior gate agent. Next to her stood someone completely different, a young South Asian woman, early 20s, with kind eyes and the nervous energy of someone new to the job. Priya Sharma. Maya found a seat with a power outlet and pulled out her laptop. Opened her keynote presentation one last time. The slides were perfect. Data showing the global digital divide. Stories of technology changing lives. Her professional headshot on the title slide with the words, Keynote Speaker, Maya Richardson, AI Ethics and Global Access. This was real. In less than 24 hours, she'd be standing on that stage, speaking to thousands, representing not just herself, but everyone who'd been told they didn't belong in tech spaces. Everyone who'd had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. She pulled out her phone and texted her best friend Keisha. Almost there. Can't believe I'm really doing this. Grandma's dream is about to come true. 3 dots appeared immediately. You better take 1,000,000 pictures. Make Dorothy proud, sis. Maya blinked back tears. She would. She absolutely would. The overhead speakers crackled to life. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Global Airways, Flight 2847 with service to Cape Town, South Africa, will begin boarding in approximately 1 hour. 1 hour. Maya took a deep breath and let herself feel the excitement, the anticipation, the weight of carrying her grandmother's unfulfilled dreams across the ocean. She had no idea that in less than 60 minutes she'd be in a fight. Not for a good seat, not for overhead bin space, but for basic human dignity. For the right to board a flight she'd paid for with documents that were completely valid. For respect that should have been automatic, but somehow never was. At 10:45, boarding began. We'd like to welcome our first class and business class passengers. Maya watched from her seat as the process started. A white family in casual clothes, hoodies, jeans, sneakers walked up to Karen's podium. Barely a glance at their documents, big smile. Enjoy your flight. A young white guy, wrinkled t-shirt, gaming laptop, same treatment. Quick scan, easy smile. No questions. Priya was processing passengers too, and every interaction was warm, efficient, smooth. People moving through like water. No friction, no problems. We'd now like to welcome Executive Platinum members and passengers in Zones 1 and 2. More passengers boarded. Maya watched the rhythm of it, the ease, the assumption of belonging that some people carried like it was their birthright. At this time, we'd like to welcome Zone 3 passengers. Maya stood up, smoothed her blazer, picked up her carry-on. Her boarding pass clearly said Zone 3, Seat 24B. She'd chosen that window seat specifically so she could watch Africa appear beneath the plane as they descended. She'd imagined that moment 100 times. She walked toward the gate desk, heels clicking on the polished floor. Professional, prepared. A woman who'd done everything right, approaching a system that was supposed to be fair. Priya reached out with a warm smile. Good morning, may I see your... I'll handle this one. Karen cut in front of her, physically blocking the younger agent, her voice sharp and final. And when Karen's eyes locked on Maya, everything changed. The temperature dropped. The smile vanished. In its place was something Maya had seen too many times before. Suspicion. Judgment. A decision already made before a single question was asked. Maya felt her stomach drop, but she kept her voice professional. Good morning. Karen took Maya's boarding pass and passport without a word. No greeting, no smile, no basic courtesy she'd given every white passenger in the last 15 minutes. She opened the passport and stared at Maya's photo. Looked up at Maya's face, back to the photo, like she was comparing them, searching for proof they didn't match. Then she held the passport up to the light, examining it like counterfeit currency. The line behind Maya was growing. She could feel the impatience building, the eyes on her back, the silent judgment. Karen started flipping through the passport pages. Slowly, deliberately, studying every stamp. Tokyo, London, Dubai, Paris, all legitimate, all proper. But Karen examined each one like she was hunting for forgery. Is everything all right? Maya asked, even though she knew it wasn't. Karen didn't look up. I need to verify something. I checked in online 24 hours ago. Everything was already confirmed. Karen's eyes met Maya's, and they were ice cold. Ma'am, I need you to step aside. You're holding up the line. There it was, the blame. The implication that Maya was the problem when she'd done everything right. I'm in zone 3, Maya said, voice steady but firm. My zone was called. I'm not holding anyone up. Behind her, Priya was already waving through the next passengers. A white couple, also zone 3, also economy. No questions asked, 5-second scan, have a great flight. Welcome back to Mirror Stories. If you are new here, you've joined a community dedicated to truth, justice, and survival. Show some love by clicking the likes and subscribe button. Before we dive deeper into the story, drop a comment where you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. Maya stood there while passenger after passenger boarded around her. White families, white business travelers, white college students. All processed in seconds, all welcomed aboard with smiles. And Maya, with her valid documents and confirmed ticket and professional appearance, stood there being treated like a suspect. Karen was typing on her computer now, still holding Maya's passport, the clicks slow and deliberate. Priya glanced over with concern but said nothing. The whispers started, other passengers murmuring. Some looked sympathetic, others looked annoyed, like Maya was inconveniencing them. And others had that look, the one that assumes if you're being questioned, you must deserve it. Maya had been here before. Different airport, different gate agent, same story. And every time before, she'd made the same choice. Stay calm, stay professional. Don't react. Don't give them the angry black woman they expect. Swallow it. Process it later. Alone. But standing there, thinking about her grandmother who never got this chance, thinking about the keynote speech she was supposed to give about equity and access, thinking about every single time she'd stayed silent to make other people comfortable, Maya felt something shift. Not today. Today, they'd picked the wrong woman to mess with. And they were about to find out exactly what that meant. Karen asked Maya the same question 3 times, not because she didn't hear the answer, but because she wanted everyone in that gate area to hear her asking it. And what exactly is the purpose of your trip to South Africa? Like Maya was crossing a border illegally instead of boarding a commercial flight with a paid ticket and valid documentation. This wasn't security protocol. This was a performance. And Maya was about to become the unwilling star of a humiliation show that dozens of passengers would witness, record, and share with the world. But here's what Karen didn't know. Here's what she couldn't possibly have anticipated. The woman standing in front of her, maintaining perfect composure while being interrogated like a criminal, wasn't going to break, wasn't going to cry, wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Maya Richardson had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Every microaggression, every time someone questioned whether she really went to MIT, every time a store clerk followed her through the aisles, every single instance had been training, and Karen Mitchell was about to learn that there's a difference between someone who's quiet and someone who's calculating their next move. The purpose of my trip, Maya said, her voice measured and clear so everyone could hear, is to deliver the keynote address at the Global Tech Summit in Cape Town. I'm a senior software architect. This is a business trip, as I've already explained, twice. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't like that answer. Not because it wasn't legitimate, but because it disrupted the narrative she'd already constructed in her mind about who Maya was supposed to be. "And your employer is paying for this ticket?" Karen asked, eyes scanning the boarding pass like she'd suddenly find proof of fraud. "No, I paid for it myself." Karen's eyebrows rose. "You paid for an international flight yourself? To South Africa?" The implication hung in the air like smoke. How could you possibly afford this? The unspoken question that Maya had heard in 1,000 different ways throughout her life. "Yes," Maya said simply. "I paid for my own ticket. With my own money. Or my own bank account. Is there anything else you'd like to know about my personal finances, or can I board my flight now?" Priya, the younger gate agent, shifted uncomfortably beside Karen. She reached toward the keyboard like she was going to process Maya's boarding pass herself, but Karen's hand shot out and stopped her. "I've got this, Priya," Karen said sharply. "Not a suggestion. An order." Behind Maya, the line had grown to at least 15 people. And yet, somehow, passengers kept boarding. Priya was processing people on the side. A businessman with a rumpled suit, a family with 3 small children and enough luggage to stay for a month, 2 elderly women traveling together. All of them white. All of them waved through without a single question. Not one person asked about the purpose of their trip, or how they paid for their ticket, or whether their passport was legitimate. Maya watched them pass. Watched the ease of it, the normalcy of it, and felt that familiar burn in her chest that came from being singled out for scrutiny you didn't deserve. "This passport," Karen said, holding it up again like it was evidence at a trial. "When did you say you got this?" 2 years ago. When I renewed it, as you can see from the issue date, right there on the page you're holding. And you've traveled internationally how many times?" "Multiple times. For work. As you can also see from the stamps throughout the passport you've been examining for the past 10 minutes. Karen's face flushed. She didn't like Maya's tone. Didn't like that Maya wasn't cowering or apologizing or making herself smaller to ease the tension. But Maya was done shrinking, done apologizing for existing in spaces she'd earned the right to occupy. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to adjust your attitude," Karen said, her voice rising just enough for nearby passengers to turn and look. "My attitude?" Maya's voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath. "I've answered every question you've asked. Multiple times. I've provided valid documentation. I've been nothing but professional. What exactly about my attitude needs adjusting?" A passenger in line behind Maya, an older white man in a golf shirt, spoke up loud enough for everyone to hear. "Is there a problem here? Some of us have connections to make." Karen seized the opportunity like she'd been waiting for it. "I apologize for the delay, sir. I'm just verifying this passenger's documents." "Well, maybe she should have her documents in order before holding up the entire line," the man said, shooting Maya a look of pure annoyance. Maya turned to face him. "My documents are completely in order. They have been since I arrived at this gate. The delay has nothing to do with me." The man scoffed. "Sure doesn't look that way from where I'm standing." And there it was. The assumption. The automatic siding with authority. The immediate belief that if Maya was being questioned, she must be at fault. An older white woman behind him leaned toward her husband and whispered, but not quietly enough. "They always try to fly places they can't afford, probably using a fraudulent credit card or something." Maya heard it, felt the words land like a slap. But she didn't react, didn't turn around, didn't give them the scene they expected. Just stood there, breathing carefully, holding on to her composure like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Karen was typing again, one finger at a time, her eyes on the screen, but clearly not actually reading anything useful. This was theater, performance art designed to humiliate, to remind Maya that despite her education, despite her success, despite doing everything right, someone like Karen could still make her wait, could still make her prove her worth, could still exercise power over her in this small, petty, devastating way. "I'm going to need to call my supervisor," Karen finally said, reaching for the phone at her desk. Maya's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because your passport requires additional verification." "No, it doesn't. My passport is valid. You can see that it's valid. This is racial profiling, and we both know it." The words landed in the gate area like a bomb. Conversations stopped, heads turned, phones came out. Because Maya had said the quiet part out loud. Had named the thing everyone could see, but most were too uncomfortable to acknowledge. Karen's face went red. How dare you accuse me of doing exactly what you're doing? Maya's voice was still controlled, but louder now. Clear. I've watched you process dozens of passengers in the time you've been questioning me. Not one of them was asked about the purpose of their trip. Not one of them was asked how they paid for their ticket. Not one of them had their passport held up to the light and examined like it might be counterfeit. The only difference between me and them is the color of my skin. So yes, I'm calling this what it is. Racial profiling. Priya looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. A few passengers in line nodded slightly, like they'd been thinking the same thing but were relieved someone finally said it. Karen picked up the phone. I need supervisor support at gate B47, immediately. While they waited, the gate continued to board around them. Zone 4 was called. Zone 5. Maya's zone had been called 15 minutes ago. Her seat was in the back of the plane. Other people were sitting in her row right now, settling in, storing their bags, preparing for an 11-hour flight that Maya was supposed to be on. A man in a suit approached the desk. Derek Chen, according to his name tag. Supervisor. Late 30s, already looking exhausted, and it wasn't even noon yet. The kind of middle manager who'd spent his career avoiding conflict and was deeply unhappy to be inserted into this situation. Karen immediately pulled him aside, whispering urgently while gesturing at Maya like she was a problem that needed solving. Derek approached with the forced smile of someone trying to de-escalate a situation he didn't understand and didn't want to be part of. Good morning, ma'am. I understand there's been some confusion. There's no confusion, Maya cut in. There's discrimination. Your gate agent has spent the last 20 minutes interrogating me about a completely valid passport and paid ticket while processing every other passenger without question. I want her employee number. I want your name and employee number, and I want to file a formal complaint. Derek's smile faltered. Ma'am, I'm sure we can resolve this without. Without what? Without me exercising my right to report discrimination? Without me documenting that your airline is engaging in racial profiling? Derek glanced at Karen, clearly hoping she'd somehow make this easier. She didn't. Her passport seems irregular, Karen said, doubling down. I have concerns about its validity. Derek took the passport from Karen's hand and examined it himself, flipped through it, held it up to the light like Karen had. But even Maya could see the difference. Derek wasn't looking for problems. He was looking for an excuse to end this and get back to his office. The passport looks fine to me, Derek said quietly to Karen. Can we just process her? And no. Karen's voice was firm, absolute. Something is off about this. I can feel it. We have the authority to deny boarding to any passenger we deem suspicious, and I'm exercising that authority. Maya's hands clenched at her sides. Suspicious of what? What exactly am I suspicious of? Having valid documents? Paying for my own ticket? Being black? Derek looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Ma'am, please, let's not make this about what it clearly is, Maya finished. You want me to make this easier for you? You want me to be quiet and accept this treatment so you don't have to deal with the uncomfortable reality that your employee is discriminating against me? The gate area had gone quiet. Everyone watching now. Phones definitely recording. This wasn't just a gate delay anymore. This was an incident, a scene. The kind of thing that ended up on social media with captions like, "You won't believe what happened at the airport today." Derek was sweating now, literally sweating, small beads forming on his forehead. Let me just process your boarding pass and we can discuss this further once you've... No, Karen interrupted. I'm not comfortable boarding her, not until we verify everything thoroughly. Karen, Derek said, his voice strained with the effort of trying to sound authoritative. The flight is boarding. Her passport is valid. Her ticket is confirmed. I need to hold on to this passport for additional verification, Karen said, and suddenly she was walking away from the desk, Maya's passport still in her hand. Maya's heart kicked into overdrive. You cannot hold my passport. That's illegal. We have the authority to retain documents for verification purposes, Karen said over her shoulder. moving toward the restricted area behind the desk. That's not what that policy means, and you know it, Maya said, her voice rising for the first time. You cannot keep my passport. That is theft. Karen wasn't listening. She was walking toward her desk area, the space behind the counter where gate agents kept their bags and personal items. And then, in what looked like slow motion to Maya, Karen's hand opened. The passport slipped from her fingers. It fell toward the floor, but didn't land there. Instead, it dropped directly into a trash bin positioned near the desk. The sound of it hitting the garbage was soft, almost silent, but Maya heard it like a gunshot. My passport just went to the trash, Maya said, her voice deadly quiet now. Karen turned around with an expression of mock surprise that was so theatrical it would have been funny if it wasn't so horrifying. Oh no, did it? How clumsy of me. She didn't move to retrieve it, didn't bend down to fish it out. Just stood there with that cold smile, like she was daring Maya to react. Daring her to lose control, to become the angry black woman they all expected, to give them a reason to call security and have her removed. Priya gasped audibly. Actually gasped. Karen, you need to get that out right now. Priya, why don't you finish boarding the remaining passengers? Karen said, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. I'll handle this situation. Derek looked like he might pass out. Karen, you need to retrieve her passport immediately. It was an accident. Karen said, shrugging. These things happen. Maya took a step toward the trash bin. Karen immediately moved to block her path. Ma'am, you cannot come behind the desk. This is a restricted area. Federal regulations. You threw my passport in the trash, Maya said, and she could hear her voice shaking now, not with fear but with rage so profound it was taking every ounce of her control not to explode. It was an accident, Karen repeated, and now I'm afraid you're creating a disturbance. I'm creating a disturbance? Maya's voice rose. You threw my passport in the garbage and you're saying I'm the one creating a disturbance? Passengers were recording openly now, multiple phones out. Someone was definitely live streaming this. The elderly woman who'd made the racist comment earlier was whispering urgently to her husband. The businessman who'd complained about the wait was watching with wide eyes, finally understanding that this wasn't about slow processing. Derek was frantically typing something on his computer, probably incident reports or calls for backup, his face the color of old newspaper. Ma'am, Karen said, her voice loud and clear and calculated for everyone to hear. I'm going to need you to calm down and step back from the desk, or I will have no choice but to call security. Call security? Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. You destroyed my legal documents and you're threatening me with security? I'm protecting the safety of this gate and these passengers, Karen said, already reaching for the phone. You're being aggressive and disruptive. Maya stood absolutely still. Didn't move toward Karen, didn't raise her hands, didn't make any gesture that could be misinterpreted. Just stood there, breathing carefully, while her passport sat in a trash bin and a gate agent prepared to paint her as a threat. This was the moment. The crossroads. Maya could feel it. She could yell, could demand they retrieve her passport, could make the scene Karen was clearly hoping for. And then she'd be the problem. The difficult passenger, the woman who couldn't control herself. Security would come, she'd be escorted out, and maybe she'd file a complaint later that would go nowhere, while Karen continued doing this to the next black passenger and the next and the next. Or Maya could do something different. Something Karen wasn't prepared for. Something that would shift this entire situation in a way nobody saw coming. Karen was already speaking into the phone. Security to gate B47. I have a disruptive passenger who's refusing to comply with instructions. The final boarding announcement came over the speakers. This is the final boarding call for Global Airways Flight 2847 to Cape Town. All remaining passengers should board at this time. Maya's flight, her keynote, her grandmother's dream. All of it slipping away while she stood there being treated like a criminal for the crime of existing while black. Around her, the gate area buzzed with tension. Some passengers looked sympathetic. Others looked afraid, like whatever was happening might be dangerous. Most just looked uncomfortable, wanting this to be over so they could board their own flights and forget they ever witnessed this. Priya looked like she was about to cry. Derek, Looked like he was going through every possible scenario of how this could end his career. And Karen looked triumphant. Like she'd won. Like she'd successfully put Maya in her place. But then Maya did something that changed everything. Something so simple and so devastating that it would haunt Karen Mitchell for the rest of her life. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, not frantically, not dramatically, just calmly, deliberately, like she was checking a text message. "Ma'am, put the phone away," Karen snapped. "You're not allowed to record behind the security line." "I'm not recording," Maya said quietly. "I'm making a phone call." She opened her contacts, scrolled to a name. James, Global Airways. Took one deep breath and hit dial. Karen laughed, actually laughed. "Let me guess, you know the CEO? You're gonna call corporate and complain?" Maya didn't answer, just held the phone to her ear while it rang. Once, twice. Derek was staring at Maya's phone like it might explode. Priya had stopped processing passengers entirely. The gate area had gone completely silent, except for the ringing and the distant sound of the plane engines on the tarmac. On the third ring, someone picked up. A man's voice, professional and warm, came through clearly. "Maya, please tell me you're calling from 30,000 feet. Maya's face remained completely calm, completely composed. But there was something in her eyes now. Something that made Karen's smirk start to fade. "Hi James," Maya said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm actually still on the ground, at gate B47, and I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. If you want to see a gate agent's face when she realizes she just made a career-ending mistake, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens in the next 60 seconds will absolutely blow your mind." Karen's face had gone from smug to confused. Derek had gone pale. Priya's mouth was hanging open. And Maya Richardson, standing there with her passport in the trash and her dignity intact, was about to remind everyone in that airport that underestimating someone is the most expensive mistake you can make. But before we see how this unfolds, I have a question for you. Have you ever had a moment where someone underestimated you, treated you like you didn't matter, and you got the chance to prove them spectacularly wrong? Drop your story in the comments. Because Maya's about to deliver a masterclass in why you should never judge someone based on what you think you know about them. "James," Maya continued, her voice carrying across the silent gate area, "a gate agent named Karen Mitchell has spent the last 30 minutes racially profiling me, interrogating me about my valid documents, and has just thrown my passport into a trash bin. She's now called security to have me removed from the gate." There was a pause. Then James's voice came through, and it wasn't warm anymore. It was ice cold. "Put her on the phone. Right now." Karen's face drained of all color. Derek looked like he might vomit. And Maya Richardson, calm as still water, held out her phone toward the woman who'd just made the worst decision of her professional life. "Karen Mitchell," Maya said softly, "James Caldwell would like to speak with you." Here's the thing about power. It can shift in the time it takes to say a name. One moment you're standing there holding all the cards, smug and secure in your authority. The next moment, you're realizing you just picked a fight with someone who has the CEO on speed dial. And there's no rewind button. No takebacks. Just the horrifying, slow-motion understanding that you've made a mistake so catastrophic, it's going to follow you for the rest of your career. Karen Mitchell was about to learn this lesson in the most public, most humiliating way possible. Maya stood there, phone extended, James Caldwell's voice coming through clear enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear. "Put her on the phone, right now." Karen's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the phone, tried to compose her face, tried to find that authority she'd wielded so confidently 60 seconds ago. But her voice cracked when she spoke. "This is Karen Mitchell, Senior Gate Agent. There seems to be some confusion." "There's no confusion, Miss Mitchell." James Caldwell's voice was cold enough to freeze the coffee in the Starbucks 3 gates down. "What there is you throwing a passenger's passport in the trash. Would you like to explain to me how that's standard protocol?" "It was an accident, sir. I was simply trying to verify." "Verify what exactly? Her passport is valid. I'm looking at her passenger profile right now. 2.3 million miles with Global Airways. Executive Platinum status for the past 6 years. Do you know what that means, Miss Mitchell? Karen's face had gone from red to white. She was flying economy. I didn't think. You didn't think to check her frequent flyer status before interrogating her for 30 minutes? You didn't think to show her the same basic courtesy you showed every other passenger at that gate? Derek Chen had pulled up his computer and was frantically typing, pulling up Maya's profile. When the screen loaded, his face went the color of old newsprint. His hands actually shook as he stared at the information. Over 2 million miles, executive platinum. But more than that, there were notes in the profile. Corporate account, VIP designation. Multiple commendations from flight crews. A passenger history that screamed valued customer in every possible way. And they'd thrown her passport in the trash. Priya had leaned over to look at Derek's screen. Her hand went to her mouth. She'd tried to tell Karen, tried to just process Maya like a normal passenger. But Karen had shut her down. And now they were all standing in the blast radius of Karen's catastrophic judgment. Sir, Karen tried again, her voice desperate now. I was just following security protocols. What protocols? Tell me exactly which security protocol instructs you to ask a passenger how they paid for their ticket. Which protocol tells you to question their profession? Which protocol authorizes you to throw valid documents in the garbage? Silence. Because there were no protocols. Just bias. Just assumptions. Just the same tired pattern of seeing a young black woman and deciding she couldn't possibly belong. Unregret, I want her passport retrieved immediately, James said. Not in 5 minutes, not when you're ready. Right now. Derek practically dove for the trash bin, pulled out Maya's passport, brushed off a coffee cup lid that had been sitting on top of it, wiped it on his sleeve like that would somehow undo the disrespect. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it twice as he brought it to Maya. Miss Richardson, he stammered. I am so sorry. Here's your passport. Please, Maya took it from him without a word, examined it for damage, a small coffee stain on one corner. The indignity of it, the sheer disrespect. Her legal documents, the thing that proved her identity and citizenship, treated like garbage. Now, James continued, and his voice somehow got even colder, I want Miss Richardson upgraded to first class. Immediately. Derek's fingers flew across the keyboard. Done. Seat 2A, first class. Good. Now Karen Mitchell, you are suspended effective immediately. Remove your badge and step away from the gate. Sir, please, I have a mortgage, I have bills. You should have thought about that before you decided to racially profile one of our most valuable customers. Badge. Now. The gate area had gone completely silent. Every passenger watching, every phone recording. This wasn't just a complaint that would get filed away. This was a public reckoning happening in real time. Karen's hands fumbled with her badge, tears starting to stream down her face. This isn't fair. I was just doing my job. Your job, James's voice cut through her protests like a knife, is to process passengers professionally and courteously. Your job is not to interrogate people based on your personal biases. Your job is definitely not to throw passports in the trash. Security had arrived. 2 officers looking confused because they'd been called for a disruptive passenger but were now clearly being redirected to a very different situation. Officers, Derek said, his voice cracking, we need you to escort Ms. Mitchell from the gate area. Karen looked around wildly, like she was searching for someone to defend her. Someone to say this was all an overreaction. But the passengers who'd been watching knew what they'd seen. The differential treatment, the excessive questioning, the deliberate cruelty of that passport drop. An older black woman who'd been standing in line spoke up, her voice firm and clear. I saw the whole thing. That passport didn't fall by accident. She dropped it on purpose. I got it on video. A South Asian man near the windows held up his phone. I've been recording since she started interrogating her. Got the whole thing. The questions about how she paid for her ticket, the trash bin. All of it. Priya, finding her courage now that the power dynamic had shifted, stepped forward. I tried to tell you, Karen. I tried to say her documents were fine. You wouldn't listen. Karen was escorted away from the gate, still crying, still protesting. This is unfair. I was just being thorough. Her voice faded as security walked her down the corridor. Every passenger in the gate area watched her go. Some looked satisfied, others looked uncomfortable, like they were witnessing something they wished they could unsee. A few were already typing on their phones, probably posting the videos, sharing the story, adding their commentary about what they'd just witnessed. Maya stood there, her passport back in her hand, stained and crumpled. First-class boarding pass being printed. Victory, supposedly. Justice, technically. But there was no triumph in her expression. Just exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting battles you shouldn't have to fight. From having to prove your worth to people who should never have questioned it in the first place. Miss Richardson, James's voice came through the phone again, softer now. I cannot apologize enough for what you just experienced. This is not who we are. This is not what Global Airways stands for. Maya wanted to believe that. Wanted to think this was an isolated incident. But she'd been alive long enough, been black long enough to know better. This wasn't one bad employee. This was a system that hired people like Karen, trained them inadequately, and gave them just enough power to make other people's lives miserable. Thank you, James, Maya said quietly. I'll speak with you when I land. Please do. And Maya? I'm glad you called. I'm glad you didn't just accept this. Too many people would have. They ended the call. Maya slipped her phone back in her pocket, looked at the boarding pass Derek was holding out to her with shaking hands. First class. Seat 2A. An upgrade that felt less like a gift and more like compensation for trauma. Derek was practically trembling as he handed Maya her new boarding pass. Miss Richardson, please allow me to personally escort you to the aircraft. It's the absolute least we can do. I am so profoundly sorry for what you experienced. There are no words. You're right, Maya said quietly. There aren't words, but there should be actions. Training. Policy changes. Systems that prevent this from happening to the next person who doesn't happen to have the VP's phone number. Derek nodded frantically. Yes, absolutely. I'll make sure this gets reported. Full incident documentation. I promise you. We'll see, Maya said, because she'd heard promises before. The walk to the aircraft felt surreal. Other passengers stared, some with sympathy, others with curiosity, trying to piece together what they'd missed. The jetway was empty and quiet after the chaos of the gate, but standing at the aircraft door was someone Maya hadn't expected. The captain. A black woman in her 50s, silver streaks running through her natural hair, pilot's uniform, crisp and professional, 4 stripes on her shoulders. Captain Jennifer Morrison, according to her name tag. Their eyes met, and in that moment something passed between them. Recognition. Not of each other personally, but of shared experience, of knowing what it meant to exist in spaces that weren't designed for you, of fighting for every inch of respect, and still having to prove yourself over and over. Miss Richardson, Captain Morrison said quietly, her voice warm but weighted with understanding. I heard what happened at the gate. I want you to know that what you experienced doesn't represent who we are, or at least, who we're trying to be. Trying to be? Maya asked. I've been with this airline for 28 years, started as a flight attendant because that's all they'd let black women do back then. Fought my way to the cockpit, fought for every promotion, every type rating, every command. She paused, her eyes holding Maya's. Change is slow, slower than it should be, but it's people like you who force it to happen faster, who refuse to be silent, who make phone calls that expose the truth. Captain Morrison reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. A handwritten note. She pressed it into Maya's hand. You did more today than just stand up for yourself. 3 flight attendants have already messaged me about incidents they stayed quiet about before. Seeing you speak up gave them permission to do the same. So thank you for your courage and for not letting them silence you. Maya's eyes stung with tears for the first time all day. Not from the humiliation, from knowing that her refusal to stay silent had rippled outward, had given other people courage. She walked into the first-class cabin, leather seats, extra space, champagne already being offered, a world away from the economy seat she'd paid for. Other passengers glanced up as she entered. Most looked away quickly. But one man, white, early 50s, expensive suit, did a visible double take when Maya settled into seat 2A. He leaned across the aisle. Excuse me, are you sure you're in the right cabin? Before Maya could respond, a flight attendant appeared. Young woman, name tag reading Lisa. Her voice was professional but firm. Sir, Please return to your own seat. And yes, Miss Richardson is absolutely in the right place. The man's face flushed. He mumbled something and turned away. Lisa leaned down, speaking quietly to Maya. I heard what happened at the gate. Word travels fast on the crew line. I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Would you like some water? Champagne? Some time to just breathe? Water, please, Maya said, and maybe some time to process what just happened. Take all the time you need. The plane filled. Engines powered up, safety demonstrations completed, and then finally, the aircraft pushed back from the gate, taxied to the runway. The acceleration of takeoff pressed Maya back into her leather seat. The wheels left the ground. Chicago fell away below them. Maya stared out the window and tried to make sense of what she was feeling. Relief that she was finally on this flight. Anger at what it took to get here. Exhaustion from the emotional marathon of the last hour. And underneath it all, a deep, bone-tired sadness that this was still happening. That in 2025, with all the progress and all the conversations and all the promises of change, a black woman with multiple degrees and millions of frequent flyer miles could still be treated like a criminal for trying to board a plane. She thought about her grandmother, about her mother, about every black woman who'd come before her who'd experienced this same dehumanization in different forms. Denied service at restaurants, followed in stores, questioned in spaces they'd earned the right to occupy. And she thought about all the times they'd had to swallow it. Stay quiet, protect themselves by making themselves smaller. What would her grandmother have done in that gate area? Probably stayed silent. Not because she was weak, but because speaking up in 1965 could get you killed. Her mother might have complained quietly after the fact, filed a report that went nowhere. But Maya? Maya had options her ancestors didn't have. Connections, resources, a platform. And she was beginning to understand that having those things came with responsibility. An hour into the flight, Lisa approached with a tablet. Miss Richardson? There's a video call for you, Mr. Caldwell. I can take you to the galley for privacy if you'd like. Maya followed her to the small galley space. The tablet showed James Caldwell's face. He was in an office somewhere, tie loosened, looking tired. Maya, how are you holding up? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I've spent the last hour in emergency meetings. I need you to know we're taking this seriously. Karen Mitchell has been terminated, not suspended. Terminated, effective immediately. And Derek? Mandatory retraining. His failure was passive, but it was still a failure. He should have intervened the moment he recognized what was happening. Maya nodded slowly. What about the systemic issue, James? Because this isn't about one gate agent. You know that. I do know that. He ran a hand through his hair. Which is why I want to propose something. When you're back from Cape Town, I want you to consult with our diversity and inclusion team. Help us redesign our anti-discrimination training. Help us build better systems to catch this before it happens. You'd have direct access to the C-suite, real authority to implement changes, and you'd be compensated appropriately for your expertise. Maya felt something twist in her chest. So you want me to fix your racism problem? James had the grace to look uncomfortable. I want you to help us do better. I know that's not the same as not having the problem in the first place. I know asking you to solve something you just experienced is its own kind of burden. But you have insights we need. You understand this in a way we clearly don't. And what if I say no? What if I say it's not my job to teach your company not to discriminate? Then I respect that completely. But I hope you'll at least consider it. Because the alternative is, we bring in consultants who've never experienced this, who'll run some workshops, update some slides, and nothing will fundamentally change. You could actually make a difference. Maya closed her eyes. This was the weight her ancestors never had to carry. The expectation that experiencing oppression qualified you to dismantle it. That surviving discrimination meant you should educate the people who discriminated against you. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I can promise right now. That's all I'm asking. Enjoy Cape Town, Maya. You've earned this trip 1,000 times over. The call ended. Maya stood in the galley for a moment, listening to the white noise of the plane engines, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones. When she returned to her seat, something had changed. The businessman who'd questioned her presence was gone, moved to a different seat. In his place, a warm smile from a woman across the aisle who said, "That took courage, what you did. Thank you." Maya didn't feel courageous. She felt tired. 11 hours later, the plane began its descent into Cape Town. Maya woke from fitful sleep to see the African coastline through her window. Table Mountain rising from the earth like a promise, the ocean sparkling in the late afternoon sun. And despite everything that happened, despite the exhaustion and the anger and the sadness, Maya felt something else too. Purpose, connection. The sense that her grandmother was with her in this moment, seeing this continent for the first time through Maya's eyes. The wheels touched down, South African soil. Finally, Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom. "Welcome to Cape Town. Local time is 6:47 p.m. For those continuing their journey, we thank you for flying Global Airways." As passengers gathered their things, Captain Morrison appeared in the first-class cabin. She handed Maya a folded piece of paper. "Read this when you're ready." Maya opened it later, in the immigration line. The note was handwritten. "You did more today than stand up for yourself." 3 flight attendants reported incidents they'd stayed silent about before. 2 passengers filed complaints about treatment they'd previously accepted. You made space for their voices. Keep flying. Keep speaking up. Keep forcing the change. Captain J. Morrison. Maya's phone buzzed as she collected her luggage. A news alert. Global Airways under fire after gate agent video goes viral. Airline promises policy overhaul. The videos from the gate had exploded online. Millions of views already. Comment sections filled with similar stories, people sharing their own experiences. The hashtag Justice for Maya trending. News outlets picking it up. Calls for industry-wide changes. Another message. Her mother. "Baby, I saw the news. Are you okay? Call me when you can." Maya typed back, "I'm okay, Mom. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Maya walked out of Cape Town International Airport into the warm South African evening. The air smelled different here. Felt different, heavy with meaning and history and connection. She pulled out her phone one more time, opened the voice memo app, and spoke into it like she was speaking directly to her grandmother. "Grandma Dorothy, I made it. I'm here. I wish you could see this. I wish you could feel what I'm feeling right now. They tried to stop me, tried to make me feel like I didn't belong, but I'm here anyway. We're here anyway." Her voice cracked. "I don't know if taking that consulting job is the right thing. I don't know if it's my responsibility to fix their broken system. But I do know this. You never got to fight back. You had to stay silent to stay safe. Mom had to pick her battles carefully. But me? I have options you never had. And maybe that means I have obligations too." She wiped her eyes, looked up at Table Mountain in the distance. "I'm gonna make you proud, Grandma. Not just by giving this keynote, but by making sure what happened to me today doesn't happen to someone else tomorrow. I don't know how yet, but I promise you, I'm going to try." Maya Richardson walked toward the taxi stand, her slightly crumpled passport in her bag, her first-class boarding pass as evidence of a battle won, and the weight of future battles still to be fought sitting heavy on her shoulders. But she walked forward anyway. Because that's what her grandmother had taught her. You keep moving, you keep fighting, you keep showing up in spaces that don't want you until those spaces have no choice but to change. And sometimes, change starts with one woman refusing to stay silent. One phone call that exposes the truth. One moment of courage that ripples outward farther than you ever imagined possible. The story could have ended at that gate, with silence and acceptance, and another black woman swallowing discrimination to avoid being labeled difficult. But Maya Richardson decided to make a different choice. And that choice didn't just get her on a plane. It started a movement. 3 days later, Maya Richardson stood backstage at the Cape Town International Convention Center, listening to the roar of thousands of voices settling into their seats. The Global Tech Summit. The moment she'd been preparing for. The keynote that was supposed to define her career. Except now, everyone in that auditorium already knew who she was, not because of her credentials, not because of her work in AI ethics, but because 48 hours ago, a video of her standing at Gate B47 had gone viral. 15 million views and climbing. News outlets running the story, social media exploding with reactions. The woman who made one phone call and brought an airline to its knees. Maya held her presentation notes in her hands. She'd written this speech months ago, carefully researched, meticulously crafted, every word designed to make an impact. But standing there, about to walk onto that stage, she realized something. The speech she'd written before the airport was a speech from someone who still believed that if you were just excellent enough, just professional enough, just prepared enough, the system would treat you fairly. That woman didn't exist anymore. Maya made a decision. She wasn't going to rewrite the entire keynote to be about what happened at the gate. That would let the discrimination define her instead of inform her. But she wasn't going to pretend it didn't happen either. She was going to let that experience sharpen her message. Give it weight, give it truth. The introduction began. Her accomplishments listed, her credentials recited, the applause building. And then her name. Please welcome to the stage, Maya Richardson. She walked out into blinding stage lights. Thousands of faces looking up at her, and she could feel it. They knew. Everyone in this room had seen the videos, had read the articles, had watched a gate agent throw her passport in the trash, and then watched Maya refuse to be silenced. Maya stood at the podium, took a breath, and began. We build systems that we claim are neutral. Algorithms with no bias, platforms with equal access, artificial intelligence that treats everyone the same. We tell ourselves that technology is the great equalizer, that code doesn't see color or gender or class, that if we just make the systems good enough, smart enough, fair enough, they'll solve the inequality problems that humans created. She paused. Let the words settle. But here's what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I know to be true. Systems are only as fair as the people who design them, and people bring their biases, conscious and unconscious, into everything they create, every decision, every interaction, every moment where someone has to choose between what's easy and what's right. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I was reminded this week that bias doesn't just exist in code, it exists everywhere. At airport gates, in boardrooms, in classrooms, in hospitals, in every single space where someone has decided who belongs and who doesn't, based on something as arbitrary and meaningless as the color of their skin. She didn't mention the specific incident. Didn't need to. Everyone there understood exactly what she was talking about. And here's the hard truth we don't like to acknowledge. Silence protects these systems. Acceptance protects them. Every time we swallow injustice to avoid making someone uncomfortable, we're teaching the system that it can keep operating exactly as it is, that there are no consequences for treating people as less than human. Maya's voice grew stronger. But disruption, uncomfortable, awkward, difficult disruption, that's how change begins. When someone finally says, no, this isn't acceptable, this isn't right, and I refuse to pretend it is, that's when systems start to crack. That's when people start paying attention. That's when the possibility of real change becomes real. The energy in the room had shifted. This wasn't just a tech conference keynote anymore. This was something else, something deeper. So yes, we need better algorithms. We need more inclusive design. We need technology that serves everyone, not just the privileged few. But more than that, we need people who are willing to speak up when they see injustice. People who refuse to let bias hide behind the excuse of protocol. People who understand that staying silent to keep the peace is just another way of accepting oppression. Maya looked out at the sea of faces, saw people nodding, saw tears in some eyes, saw recognition of experiences they'd had too. Change is uncomfortable, speaking up is risky, disrupting systems that were never designed for you is exhausting. But the alternative, accepting degradation, swallowing discrimination, making yourself smaller so other people can be comfortable, that's not protection. That's just a different kind of harm. She paused. So speak up, disrupt, refuse to accept less than you deserve. Because your voice matters. Your dignity is non-negotiable. And the systems that try to diminish you, they only have the power we give them through our silence. The auditorium erupted, not polite conference applause, a standing ovation that went on and on. People on their feet, clapping, some crying, some shouting agreement. The kind of response that comes when someone speaks a truth that everyone felt but didn't know how to articulate. Maya stood there, letting it wash over her. Professional triumph after personal violation. Success earned through both excellence and refusal to be silent. This was the moment she'd dreamed of. But it meant more now, meant something deeper. Because she hadn't just given a good speech, she'd given permission. Permission for everyone in that room to stop accepting treatment that diminished them. Permission to speak up. Permission to demand better. That evening, Maya walked along the Cape Town waterfront as the sun set over the Atlantic Ocean. Table Mountain rose behind the city, ancient and unmovable. The water stretched endlessly toward a horizon she couldn't see. Somewhere beyond that ocean was the route slave ships had taken. The path of violence and theft that had stolen her ancestors from this continent. And here she was, standing on African soil for the first time, not in chains, not in poverty, not in silence, but as a woman who'd just delivered a keynote to thousands, who'd stood up to discrimination and won, who'd honored her grandmother's memory by refusing to accept less than she deserved. Maya pulled out her phone, opened the voice memo app, and spoke to the grandmother who'd never gotten this chance. "Grandma Dorothy, I'm standing in Cape Town right now. The sun is setting over the ocean. Table Mountain is behind me. And I can feel you here with me. I can feel all of our ancestors here. The ones who were taken, the ones who survived, the ones who dreamed of a day when their descendants could stand here freely." Her voice broke. "You never got to travel. Never got to see the ocean. Never got to stand in the place your great-great-grandparents were stolen from. But I'm here. We're here. And I made them see us, Grandma. I made them acknowledge that we belong, that we matter, that they can't just discard us when we're inconvenient." She wiped her eyes. "I know you're proud. I can feel it. And I promise you, I'm going to keep fighting, keep speaking up, keep making space for the people who come after me. Because you fought in silence. Mom fought carefully. That me? I have options you never had, and I'm going to use every single one of them." 3 months later, Maya Richardson sat in her Chicago apartment, reading news alerts on her laptop. The video from Gatebeat 47 had reached 42 million views, become a catalyst for national conversation. Sparked congressional hearings on discrimination in air travel. Led to investigations at airports across the country. Global Airways had implemented comprehensive policy changes. New anti-discrimination training. Independent oversight of passenger complaints. A whistleblower system for employees who witnessed bias. Real, structural changes that went beyond words. Karen Mitchell's termination had been upheld after formal review. Her employment record would forever show termination for discrimination, a consequence that would follow her. Derek Chen had become an unexpected advocate. After his mandatory retraining, he'd requested to help develop the new protocols. Had spoken publicly about his failure to intervene and what it taught him about complicity. Was now training other supervisors on how to recognize and stop discrimination before it escalated. And Priya Sharma? She'd been promoted, commended for trying to intervene, was now part of the team redesigning gate agent training across the airline. But the numbers that mattered most to Maya weren't the policy changes or the viral views. It was the messages. Thousands of them. From people who'd experienced similar discrimination and stayed silent, who'd swallowed the humiliation, who'd accepted treatment they never should have accepted. "I watched your video and filed a complaint about something that happened to me 6 months ago. Thank you for showing me it's not too late to speak up. My daughter saw you stand up for yourself and it gave her courage to report discrimination at her school. You changed her life. I'm a flight attendant and I've seen this happen so many times. I always stayed quiet because I was afraid. Not anymore. I reported an incident yesterday. Thank you." Message after message. Story after story. People finding their voices because Maya had used hers. Maya had accepted James Caldwell's consulting offer. Spent 3 months working with Global Airways to redesign their systems. It was exhausting, emotionally draining. Having to relive her trauma while teaching people why it was traumatic, having to explain again and again why discrimination hurts, why bias matters, why doing nothing is its own form of violence. But she'd seen changes implemented, real ones, and she'd expanded the work to other airlines, other industries, using her experience as a lens to examine systems that claimed to be fair but weren't. Her grandmother's photograph still sat on her nightstand, but next to it now was her passport. Open to the page with the Cape Town entry stamp. October 21st, 2025. The day Maya Richardson stepped onto African soil. The day she honored her grandmother's dream while creating new possibilities for the next generation. And you know what the most powerful thing was? It wasn't the policy changes, as important as those were. It wasn't the millions of views or the news coverage or even the congressional hearings. It was the shift. The cultural shift. The way people started questioning systems they'd previously accepted. The way passengers started recording interactions and speaking up. The way employees started reporting discrimination instead of looking away. One woman, one phone call, one refusal to stay silent, and it rippled outward farther than Maya ever imagined possible. Her grandmother couldn't fly internationally, couldn't demand respect in spaces that didn't want to give it, couldn't speak up without risking everything. But she'd raised a daughter who raised a daughter who could, who did, who stood at that gate and said no. Not today, not anymore. And that's the legacy Maya was building. Not just claiming space for herself, but making that space wider for everyone who came after her. Using her privilege, education, connections, resources, to fight battles that her ancestors couldn't fight. To demand dignity that should always been automatic, but somehow still had to be earned. Maya looked at her grandmother's photograph. At the woman in her Sunday best who'd cleaned houses and struggled and survived and dreamed of more for her children and grandchildren. And she whispered, "We made it, Grandma. We're still fighting, but we made it." Now here's what I want to know from you, and this is important. What's one system in your life that you've accepted as just the way things are, even though you know it's not fair? Drop it in the comments, because recognizing unfair systems is the first step to changing them. And maybe, just maybe, reading these comments will give someone else the courage to speak up about something they've been staying silent about. If Maya's story showed you anything, if it reminded you that your voice matters, that your dignity is non-negotiable, that speaking up can create change bigger than you ever imagined, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this story. Because the more people who understand what happened at Gate B47, the harder it becomes for the next Karen Mitchell to throw someone's passport in the trash and think she'll get away with it. Maya Richardson didn't just board a plane that day. She started a movement. She proved that one person refusing to accept less can force an entire industry to do better. She showed that silence might feel safer. But disruption creates change. Your grandmother's dreams matter. Your mother's struggles matter. Your own experiences with discrimination matter. And your voice, your specific, unique, powerful voice, has the ability to shift systems that seem immovable. So speak up, stand firm, make that phone call, file that complaint, record that video, share that story. Because dignity isn't something you should have to fight for, but until the world recognizes that, we fight, together, loudly, unapologetically. Maya's passport sits next to her grandmother's photograph, a reminder of how far they've come and how far there still is to go. A symbol of dreams deferred and dreams achieved. A promise that the next generation won't have to fight quite as hard because this generation refused to stay silent. That's the power of one voice. That's the impact of one moment of courage. That's what happens when someone finally says enough. Thank you for watching Maya's story. Thank you for being part of the conversation. And thank you for remembering that your voice, your dignity, your refusal to accept less, it all matters more than you know. Now go make some noise. Gate agent throws away black girl's passport. Seconds later, what she did leaves airline in shock.